Porzingis is the perfect example of what I like to call a modernized big man from the past. Back then, the role of a big was pretty straightforward. Post-ups on the block or setting screens as the roll man in a pick and roll. That was the job. But in today's game, big men are expected to do so much more. It's not just about rolling to the rim anymore. It's about popping out beyond the arc, stretching the floor as a three-point threat, and forcing defenses to respect their spacing. On top of that, they need to be able to put the ball on the deck, attack closeouts, and in some cases, even serve as an offensive hub, making plays for others. And Porzingis, he's a blend of all those qualities rolled into one, which makes him incredibly valuable on any team. Last season, the Celtics even designed inbounds plays just for him, having him come off screens, building momentum so he could explode toward the rim. Sure, sometimes that ended in a simple lob and finish, but Porzingis is far more than just a vertical threat. At times, if a player were to shade over to cut off his path to the rim, just like in this scenario with Brunson, Porzingis is more than capable of receiving the pass and knocking down a jumper right over his man. And it's not just on set plays. Anytime he creates even a sliver of separation off the ball, he's nearly impossible for opposing bigs to handle. He's too quick, too skilled, and when he puts the ball on the floor to attack the rim, there just aren't many counters for it. Now picture Trae Young setting those off-ball screens for Porzingis next season. If defenses decide to overhelp on Porzingis as he comes off those screens, then suddenly Trae is standing wide open at the top of the key, one of the last places you want to leave him. But if teams try to keep it simple and just have their big fight over the screen, Porzingis gets a free runway to the basket, with the rim protector chasing him instead of protecting the rim. And if defenses choose to switch, well, then Atlanta gets to pick its poison. Trae isolating a slower big man on the perimeter, or Porzingis posting up a smaller guard inside. Either way, that's a nightmare matchup. And when it comes to the post-up game, Porzingis is one of the best in the league at it. Last season, he ranked in the 86th percentile in post offense, and among players who ran at least 2 post-up possessions per game, nobody in the entire league scored more efficiently per possession. That wasn't a one-year fluke either. Over the last 4 seasons, Porzingis has never dipped below the 85th percentile in post-up scoring. This is who he is, a consistent, dominant threat down low, and that's exactly what the Hawks need. Last season, they were second to last in post-up possessions per game, just 1.7 a night. Not only that, they ranked 24th in efficiency on those plays. Simply put, the post-up game was almost non-existent in Atlanta's offense, and when they did go to it, it wasn't effective. That's where adding Porzingis changes everything. He doesn't just give them another wrinkle in the playbook. He gives them one of the most efficient post-up scorers in the entire league, a weapon their offense has been sorely lacking. And while Okongwu was highly efficient whenever he got touches in the post, the Hawks never treated that as a go-to source of offense last season. In fact, outside of Okongwu, only DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella, and Jalen Johnson even attempted more than 10 post-ups all year. 2 of those guys aren't even on the roster anymore, and Jalen, though he only played 36 games, finished in the bottom 5% of the league in post offense. That's why bringing in a player like Porzingis completely changes the equation for Atlanta. He immediately gives the Hawks a brand new offensive dimension, a true go-to option down low. Now, Trae doesn't always have to carry the scoring load on the perimeter. He can simply dump it down to Porzingis, let him go to work, and watch him serve as a true offensive hub. But the real nightmare for opposing defenses? The Trae-Porzingis pick and roll. That 2-man action is going to be one of the toughest matchups in the league next season. Last season, Trae ranked in the 71st percentile as a pick-and-roll ball handler, generating 0.94 points per possession. But among high-volume initiators, guys running at least 5 pick-and-rolls per game, he was right in the middle of the pack. And the biggest reason why? Turnovers. Some of that is on Trae himself, trying to force flashy, high-risk passes into tight windows, instead of making the simpler read that could still tilt the defense and put it in rotation. But a big factor is the personnel around him. Too often, he's paired with one-dimensional bigs who only look to roll straight to the rim, limiting his options and shrinking the floor. Last season, the Hawks leaned heavily on Okongwu, Capella, and Jalen when he was available as their primary pick-and-roll screeners. The issue? None of the 3 posed a legitimate 3-point or pick-and-pop threat. In fact, not one of them shot above 33% from deep. While Okongwu has carved out a role as an effective roll man over the years, his one-dimensional skill set becomes exploitable, especially against playoff defenses that are dialed in and scouting every action. That lack of versatility gives defenses a built-in advantage. Take this possession, for example. Atlanta runs a standard pick and roll, but Mark Williams, sitting in drop coverage, barely has to break a sweat. He simply retreats, keeps the ball handler in front, and uses his length to cut off any passing lanes to the roller. At the same time, the weak side help rotates over, LaMelo in this case, and cleanly strips the ball off the rolling big, turning what looked like a simple scoring action into a forced turnover. We see the same breakdown in this horn set as well. Barlow rolls, the big man contains Trae in drop coverage, and once again, weak side help rotates to completely shut down the passing option. The result? Another turnover. Sometimes defenses don't even bother playing the screener honestly. They'll just blitz Trae off the screen, showing almost no respect to the roller. And that aggressive pressure has been the driving force behind a large chunk of his pick and roll turnovers. And this is where a player like Porzingis can help alleviate this issue. Porzingis is not only a lob threat as a roller, but also a deadly pick and pop shooter. At 7'3", he's nearly impossible to guard coming out of those screens. If the defense plays higher hedges, Trae and Porzingis turn it into an automatic alley-oop connection. And if the defense drops back, Porzingis simply pops out to the perimeter and drills the open three. That dual threat dynamic forces defenses to pick their poison, something Atlanta desperately lacked last season. And speaking of his shooting, Porzingis shot an incredible 42% from three last season. To put that into perspective, among all Hawks players who attempted at least 4 threes per game last year, not a single one shot better than Porzingis. And we're not just talking about a spot-up shooter who only takes wide-open looks. Porzingis is knocking down threes from well beyond the arc, sometimes a few feet behind the line, and doing it with defenders draped all over him. Now imagine that kind of shooting gravity in a pick and roll with Trae. Porzingis popping out to the perimeter after setting a screen forces the defense into an impossible dilemma. Collapse on Trae and you leave one of the league's deadliest big man shooters wide open. Or stay home on Porzingis and Trae gets a runway to create. It's the kind of action that can evolve into one of the most unstoppable two-man games in the NBA. And if defenses try to switch, that's a nightmare too. Trae can cook a slow-footed big in isolation or dump it inside to Porzingis, who's more than capable of punishing a smaller guard on the block. After all, he's one of the most efficient post scorers in the league. With that combination of inside-out versatility, the options for this duo are virtually endless. And we haven't even touched on the other side of the floor. Defensively, Porzingis was elite last season as a rim protector. Among 99 players who defended at least 200 shots at the rim, he held opponents to the 6th lowest field goal percentage. In comparison, no one on the Hawks roster last season even came close to matching Porzingis in that category. And this isn't some one-year anomaly. Porzingis has consistently proven himself as one of the game's premier rim protectors. Over the past 4 seasons, he's only once allowed opponents to shoot above 55% at the rim, and even then, that mark was still better than any Hawks defender posted last year. His timing, his recognition of when to leave his man, and his ability to offer precise help defense at the rim make driving into the paint feel less like an opportunity and more like a trap. Now imagine adding that level of rim protection to a lineup that already features defensive wings like Jalen, Dyson, and Risache, a rookie who's only going to get better with experience. Suddenly, the Hawks' defensive ceiling looks sky high. They even have the flexibility to throw out a 2-big lineup with Okongwu and Porzingis, taking advantage of Porzingis' floor spacing, or simply slide him to the 5 surrounded by 4 perimeter players. The versatility of this roster on both ends of the floor gives the coaching staff countless options, and that's why the Hawks have the potential to be one of the surprise teams in the East next season. But until then, as always, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate all your support, and I can't wait to break down more film with you next time.
He can play in any system.
Tatum lost it, shot clock down to 5. Porzingis.
Oh! Okay!